Hey, before this video begins, please leave a like if you like what you saw, and if you're interested in the videos that I make, please subscribe. I am trying not to hit the 167 because of that 67 meter. I don't like it. I'd rather be at 69. You know, it's weird how every time I try to work on an indie game review, there's something else that's happening out there in the news. I mean, I don't know what's happening. Highguard was made by an indie studio, Wildlight Entertainment Incorporated, and now we have the news of Ashes of Creation, which I thought I wasn't qualified to say on this channel, but it turns out the studio that created Ashes of Creation is yet another indie studio, that being Intrepid Studio. But here we go again, talking about something that happened in the news with something I have to do some deep research to figure out what the heck is going on. Just want to review video games, man. But anyway, Intrepid Studio is apparently an independent video game company based in San Diego, California. It used to have 250 people working for them. Now it's less, and their core project was Ashes of Creation, an MMO that is supposed to be entirely player-driven with no pay-to-win whatsoever. Hello, so I want to give a little bit of context to Ashes of Creation and what I mean by player-driven. When I mean player-driven, I mean the whole entire world is player-driven. Literal regions will develop around player actions. These nodes will develop that can turn into cities and towns. There's even a political system on how you run your town or going against another node or town or city that is run by other players. Anything that happens within that node, say NPC monsters come and attack, and if the players that are within that node do not address that issue, something will happen dynamically with that area. For example, the NPCs that live in those nodes and towns will start to hate the mobs that are within the area. Now, I don't know exactly what that would pertain to the average player if they go up to an NPC and they start asking you to do quests to get rid of said monsters. I don't know if that is a thing, but if the dynamic feature of this game is where players are basically driving the world with what they do and every action that they do, it's pretty advanced stuff. So yeah, that's what I meant by player driven. It's a lot. And to be honest, it sounds like an MMO I should be able to get around with, but I had no interest ever since the announcement was made in 2016. Even though it looked interesting, something about it was kind of not for me and kind of off. And even though there were some people who were praising it, in fact, I would say there was a lot of people praising it in the past, there were some outliers that were saying to keep a close eye of this game and be skeptical.
Ashes of Creation, a new MMORPG being made by a small independent studio, heralded by many as the next big thing, the savior of the genre, the MMO we've all been waiting for, the one that will bring disenfranchised players together and provide the gameplay experience absolutely every MMO fan wants. Will this new MMO be the game to fix all the issues and save the entire genre? In a word, no. So I say again, look forward to Ashes of Creation, but don't board the hype train. It never stops where you think it will.
I, for one, didn't have much interest in Ashes of Creation. I did watch a lot of content creators and streamers play the game. Getting into the playtest of Ashes of Creation was not hard. It was only $50. However, that Kickstarter is going to cause a lot of issues because a lot of people want their money back, and from what I've heard, they're not giving that back. Now, I don't know enough about Ashes of Creations to give my fair opinion about it since I didn't play the game, I did not invest any kind of money into it, I didn't put anything towards the Kickstarter, and I'm only hearing news about what's going on right now, where it's being, well, threatened to shut down. It hasn't shut down yet. All I can say right now is that one of the founders, Steven Sheriff, left a Discord message talking about how he had to leave the studio. And a lot of people are coming up with conspiracy theories as to how this happened, why this happened, what is really happening, and all I can say is that they don't really tell the facts, so be careful who you listen to when it comes to this information. As far as we all know, we only have Steven's side and what he said through that Discord message, and not the actual facts of what's happening. He talked about the board, he talked about him leaving, he talked about senior staff leaving, and that's about it. There were others who also left the studio, not of their own will, and they're pretty sad and talked about it on social media, but we still do not have a clear understanding of what's happening. We only have Steven's side, and what he said is that he had a disagreement with the board. And as far as we know, the board either exists or it doesn't, but from what I've gotten from Kira, who was a bit more intimate with the studio. He says that there's a lot of information that he cannot say, but it will be public sometime in the future. And I would implore anybody who wants to keep up with Ashes of Creation is to go over to Kira and be updated by him. As far as I can tell, he has a lot of information, and he's saying in the realest of terms that he can't say a lot, and he's being a bit neutral about this. The only thing I can really say about this is what Kira has said in his video is to not go after the developers. It's not their fault. And the game itself is basically Steven Sheriff. Without Steven, there is no Ashes of Creation. There are people going around who are very upset because they spent a lot of time and money on the game, who do want their refunds and are looking at this and are just very sad. But there is a lesson in this, and that's what I really want to talk about. I have no stake in Ashes of Creation actually releasing one day as a proper MMO, nor do I care about the fact that it's dying. What I get from this and what I can convey to you guys is that the signs were out there. I mean, honestly. Now, this is where I have to agree with Josh Strive Hayes, who did go on and talked about it twice on his two channels, Josh Strive Hayes and Josh Strive Says. In both instances, he talks about how players, MMO players specifically, are just a glutton for punishment. And I do have to agree, I myself am an MMO player. If you don't know, I do have another channel called Syncweaver, and that channel pertains to pretty much everything about Final Fantasy XIV. And if you don't know what Final Fantasy XIV is, it is probably the second most popular MMO in the world currently. It is story driven, doesn't really rely too much on battle and combat systems, but it does have some of the best raids you can ever find in an MMO. And unlike World of Warcraft, I do believe Final Fantasy does survive on their player base with their social inclinations, be it generally just hanging out with your friends, doing raids, or RPing. But besides that, Josh Strive Hayes makes a solid point, and that we, as MMO players, are just a glutton for punishment. You see, we strive on trying to find the next MMO, but the next MMO, or the WoW killer, or anything that comes up that should be the next big game for us MMO players, it just does not exist. The thing is, the top MMOs of all time currently is World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Old School RuneScape, Guild Wars 2, and Elder Scrolls Online. And a decade ago, the best MMOs were World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, Old School RuneScape, and Elder Scrolls Online. Any and every MMO that came in between or after these big gigantic juggernauts, well, they just did not survive. And they are either barely alive with barely enough funding to keep it awake and just keeping the servers on, or the actual player base and fans of that certain MMO is keeping it alive via some sort of private server. There just isn't winning against those big five when it comes to activity, population, popularity. And what's funny enough about all this is that the games themselves are not all that great as a video game. And hear me out when I say this, because I know a lot of people are going to look at me and say, but isn't Final Fantasy XIV one of your favorite games, and blah blah blah, and a lot of people love their MMOs, be it World of Warcraft, Old School RuneScape, and blah 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 blah. But as designed as a video game, it's not all that great and not all that fun unless you play with people. Each MMO by nature needs people to play together. I'm saying if you go into a dungeon or a raid, you're not playing by yourself. And all of them highly depend on the social aspect of video gaming. You can go into a dungeon and come out with a new best friend. That's what I mean by the social aspect. And I implore fans of Ashes of Creation to take a step back and look at their game with a wider lens. What is it that Steven and his team promised with Ashes of Creation? If you pay attention to what he has said, what he has promised, it is all player driven, and that's the point of the MMO itself, is to be player driven. And there is a reason for that. An MMO cannot function without some sort of drive from the player base. The Final Fantasy XIV fan base, for example, has a shared experience with the story. It is the story that kind of keeps everyone together on the same pace and have something that everyone likes in common, which is the story. Whereas on the other side of this, there are people who just don't give a crap about the story and they just want to beat up monsters in giant raids, which is perfectly okay too, because that is also another form of the social aspect. Ashes of Creation promises highly on the player-driven experience, and that is the same spiel that was given to everybody who had interest in the MMO. But that isn't to say that I think there's some sort of conspiracy or a vile scheme that Ashes of Creation was trying to formulate. I'm not saying that they tricked their players, I'm not saying that they lied to their players, I'm saying that is an aspect, and it is exactly what they did. They did the same thing what other MMOs did, which is the reason why Josh Drive Hayes made that video warning people about Ashes of Creation. And let's not forget about Narc, who was one of the biggest voices of Ashes of Creation, who quit playing the game and covering it a year ago. Now, unfortunately, his goodbye video to the game is no longer listed and seems to be privated, and I could not find his channel for the life of me, so I think he just basically quit YouTube altogether. However, Asmongold did react to that video, which means that you guys can kind of retroactively watch his video with Asmongold, and to be honest, rewatching that video had me questioning whether or not Narc was right about the game itself. Now again, I don't have enough knowledge, nor do I have enough interest to actually play, or did play, Ashes of Creation, but when I did some research on the Alpha 2 wave, the first, second, and third wave was $120, $110, and $100 respectively, which I don't know why you had to pay to get into that alpha. And the reason why I was stating all this is because it was funded $3 million on its initial Kickstarter, which I guess is not enough because MMOs are expensive, and the MMO that they were trying to make was AAA quality. Not to mention, it was also being funded by Steven himself. And his dream into making this AAA quality, huge world player driven MMO was going to cost more than just $3 million. So you have people who wanted to get into the second alpha through its 3 waves had to spend $120, $110, and $100 respectively. From the very jump, since I heard about it all the way back when Ashes of Creation was being funded through Kickstarter, and I knew that an MMO of this quality was going to cost more than $3 million, I always had a skeptic eye, and eventually I just lost interest in it. The lesson that should be had here is to be very careful, especially when it comes to the MMO genre. It is a very niche genre. It is not popular, not as it was back in the early 2000s, and the only reason why it survives today is because the old guard is still alive. This includes myself, this includes a lot of my friends, and this includes a lot of people who still can't get away from their favorite MMO like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XI, old school RuneScape, and all the other MMOs that are absolutely old, absolutely dated, and are being kept alive with hopes, duct tape, and dreams. It's what I said before, an MMO player is basically a glutton for punishment because they just can't let it go. MMOs was there for a lot of people who had bad communications, just wanted to play games with friends, who just wanted friends. It does come with a caveat though, because being able to communicate through the internet does not translate well with communicating in real life. I should know, I am single and I still play MMOs. And I'm also not the best looking because I get a lot of my etiquette from MMOs, so it is a problem. But that's besides the point. Due to the fact that MMOs are the way that they are, their popularity did wane because multiplayer just became a staple with every game that came out. So the younger generation didn't need MMOs to make friends. They had social media, they had multiplayer chat, they had Call of Duty lobbies. The need and want to communicate with other people was filled in by social media. So MMOs didn't seem like the game that was wanted anymore. This also drives the fact that people who play MMOs are there for the social setting, not just the video game. You have to remember, when I talked about the design of MMOs, they are not really meant to be played solo or to have fun by yourself. It is meticulously constructed for people to want to team up or to socialize, and also to get a lot of their grinding done. When a person plays an MMO or logs on into their favorite MMO, one of the first things they do is try to figure out what they need to do to get a prize at the end of a very long stretch. For example, in Final Fantasy XIV, we have something called relic weapons, and we have to go through this rather annoying grind in order to get our relic weapon, and usually to buffer that and make that all easier is to suffer with other people. So you're doing a bunch of dungeons, you're doing a bunch of raids, you're doing a bunch of fates, which are battles going against certain events on the outside where it's not a dungeon or a raid or an instance whatsoever. Because you're doing that certain thing with a friend, a group, a guild, you're not having such a bad time because you're kind of suffering together with them. And due to that long grind, it is shortened because you do have friends, and at the same time, well, you're kind of distracted by talking shit with your friends. But if you play the game solo, it is going to seem like a nightmare, which is why still MMOs have that whole party system to get with a friend or a stranger to complete a mission. They add the grind so you have something to do and suffer with your friends with. They add the rewards at the end so that when you finally do get it, it'll seem like that real short bit of celebration before you find out you have to get something else. Becoming perfect and having BIS or BIS or best in slot involves a lot of time in something like raids or trials, and you can't do that alone. You always have to be with other players or friends, and this shared experience is remembered by every MMO player, which is the reason why we are still trying to find that best MMO out there, which does not currently exist. Every time we're asking for the new MMO, we're just trying to find another place where we can socialize. Playing the game is one thing, but playing the game with somebody else is a whole better experience. When Steven was talking about Ashes of Creation, he said that it was very player driven, which is the biggest reason why anyone would play an MMO. And due to the fact, and this is the main reason why you guys are out there trying to find the new MMO, it's not because of the battle mechanics or the systems or even the story, it's because you want that social aspect, that wonder of playing a game with thousands, hundreds maybe, of other people in the same server or same place, and being able to share that experience with other people, making friends, interacting with strangers. Playing Ashes of Creation could have given that feeling to people who got into it, that player-driven mentality, that ecosystem that people wanted, the next new MMO. Ashes of Creation is a lesson to us MMO players to be careful what people say when they start giving out promises for the next big MMO. We keep falling into that trap because we want to relive that experience in a new setting, a new world, a new game with a whole bunch of people surrounding you. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to have that feeling again. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if we will or be able to. We had our MMOs, we have our favorites. And to be honest, I am still waiting for that last MMO that is still surviving today that's being created by Riot. Let's just hope that Necrid does not ever pull an Ark. And I do hope that the Riot MMO does come out in the future so that we can finally put this to bed.